Hi, I'm Emma. At 32, I've worked hard to build a life I can be proud of. I've got a stable career that I've earned through years of dedication, a small but cozy apartment I've made my own, and I've always strived to make the right decisions, sensible ones. It's not glamorous, but it's mine. And yet, when it comes to my family, none of that seems to matter. You'd think being the responsible one would earn you some credit, right? Well, not exactly. My younger sister, Lily, is everything I'm not. Where I'm cautious, she's carefree. Where I plan everything meticulously, she flies by the seat of her pants. Growing up, I was always the one keeping things in line, making sure everything was okay. But Lily? She was the one who could get away with anything, and my parents loved her for it. No matter what she did, it was always seen as charming or excusable. Take school, for example. I was the model student, getting straight A's without breaking a sweat. And yet, when I did, it was expected. No congratulations, no recognition, just more pressure to keep it up. But then Lily, barely managing to pull off B's, would get celebrated with dinners and praise. It made no sense. I used to wonder if they even noticed me at all. Work was another thing. I started my first job when I was 15, at a cafe, just to have something to do over the summer. But when I mentioned it to my parents, all they did was criticize me for not focusing enough on my studies. Meanwhile, Lily was off spending her summers lounging by the pool, and they'd say it was just her way of relaxing. I wasn't allowed to have that. Everything I did seemed to be under a microscope, but Lily? She had a free pass. As I got older, I learned to accept it, or at least pretend I had. I knew my role in the family by now. I was the reliable one, the one who always did what was expected, never rocking the boat. I accepted that maybe my efforts would never be recognized, and that I'd always be the second choice. But still, something inside me hoped that, just once, my family would see the care and effort I put into everything. Then, the 30th anniversary of my parents came around, and I knew this was my chance to finally give them something special, something that would show them how much I cared. It was always my mother's dream to visit Japan, and after years of listening to her talk about it, I decided I was going to make it happen. I spent weeks researching the perfect vacation package. Flights, hotels, private tours, everything, down to the smallest detail. I wanted to give them a trip they'd never forget, a memory to last a lifetime. I was finishing up the final details, my heart racing with excitement about how happy they'd be, when my phone rang. It was Lily. I knew it was her by the way the name flashed on the screen. Her name always seemed to pop up at the most inconvenient times. "Hey, sis," she chirped in that overly sweet voice she uses when she wants something. "So, what are you getting Mom and Dad for their anniversary?" I took a deep breath. I was proud of the gift I was giving them, and I wasn't about to let her make it feel insignificant. "I've arranged a trip to Japan for them," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. Lily didn't hesitate before laughing, a sound that was both mocking and dismissive. "Oh, you're so predictable," she said, a grin practically audible in her voice. "I knew you'd do something like that. What's your real gift?" I could feel my heart sink, but I refused to let her get under my skin. "It's a surprise," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But trust me, they're going to love it." Lily was quiet for a moment before responding with, "Yeah, whatever. I'm sure they'll love it." And then, just like that, she hung up. I stared at my phone for a few seconds before shaking my head. This was classic Lily, always looking for ways to make everything about herself. Always turning everything into a spectacle. It wasn't enough for her to give a thoughtful gift, it had to be something showy, something that would make people talk. I tried to tell myself not to let it bother me. After all, it was just Lily being Lily. But deep down, it stung. It always did. I had spent weeks planning this, trying to give my parents something they'd cherish, something that would make them proud. But no matter how much I did, I could never escape the feeling that nothing I did could ever be enough, especially compared to Lily. I had everything ready, the flights, the hotel, the tours. My parents would finally get the trip they'd always dreamed of. It felt like the perfect moment to show them how much I cared, after all the years of feeling overlooked. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Lily, my younger sister, was about to make her usual dramatic entrance. Sure enough, the day of the anniversary arrived, and just as I was preparing to present my gift, Lily stood up, drawing everyone's attention with that familiar flair of hers. "Look outside," she called. The room turned, and there it was, a brand new Audi A6, complete with a huge bow. My heart sank. Lily grinned, basking in the applause. "This is my gift to you," she announced to my parents, who were clearly overjoyed. The room erupted in cheers, and I stood frozen, clutching my little gift box, feeling smaller by the second. When the excitement died down, I handed my parents the tickets to Japan, but their reaction was flat. "Thanks, Emma," they said, barely glancing at the tickets. And then Lily chimed in, "Well, a car versus a vacation? No comparison." My parents smiled and suggested we eat. All I could hear through the dinner was how amazing Lily was, while I felt invisible. My gift, my effort, seemed irrelevant next to her grand gesture. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, I made an excuse and left. For the first time, I felt something snap inside me. This wasn't just about the gifts, it was about how I'd always been the one who gave, who sacrificed, and still, it was never enough. Something had to change. Before I tell you what happened next, the moment everything shifted, where I finally stood up for myself, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country's flag in the comments, and if you've ever been overlooked, hit that like button. This story's just getting started. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from Lily. I already knew what was coming. I picked up the phone, trying to prepare myself for her usual mix of sweetness and sarcasm. "Hey, sis," she said in her chirpy voice. "How did Mom and Dad like their anniversary gift?" "They seemed happy," I replied, keeping my tone as neutral as I could, but I could already feel the tension building in my chest. Lily let out a short laugh, clearly not satisfied with my answer. "Oh, I'm sure they were thrilled. But, let's be honest, a trip to Japan? It's so predictable, don't you think?" I felt my frustration building, but I kept my cool. "What do you mean by that?" "Come on, Emma," she continued, sounding almost patronizing. "You always play it safe, always go for the practical option. But people want something exciting, something unexpected. You've got to surprise them, shock them a little, you know?" Her words hit harder than I expected. I had poured so much into this gift, every detail thought through, every choice made with love. And yet, here was Lily, dismissing it as boring, predictable. "So, what did you do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, though I already knew where this was going. Lily didn't hesitate, her tone light and almost smug. "Oh, you'll see. But trust me, it's going to blow them away. It's something they'll never forget." I could feel the knot tightening in my stomach. "What exactly did you get them?" I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know. "I'll let the surprise speak for itself," she said, too casually. "But don't worry. They'll love it. More than your vacation. You'll see." And just like that, the call ended. No more explanation, no more details. She had left me hanging, knowing full well that whatever she was planning would overshadow everything I'd worked for. I sat there, the weight of the situation sinking in. Once again, Lily was about to steal the spotlight. No matter how hard I tried, she always seemed to be the one who got attention, who made the biggest impact. And I was always the background player, no matter how much I sacrificed. But something inside me snapped. Maybe it was time for that to change. Maybe this time I wouldn't let her have the final word. I wasn't sure how, but I knew one thing, I couldn't just let her walk away with all the praise again. I had to do something. The night of the anniversary dinner arrived, and the restaurant was alive with laughter and clinking glasses. It was supposed to be a celebration for my parents, but as soon as I stepped in, the atmosphere shifted. Lily was already in her element, taking charge, directing waiters, and drawing all the attention. She was the center of the night, and no one seemed to notice how much she was overshadowing everything else, including me. I held the little gift box with the tickets to Japan, my heart heavy. No matter how much effort I put into this, I knew Lily would find a way to steal the spotlight. As dinner started, I watched my parents beaming with pride as guests spoke about their marriage. I felt proud of them too, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my gift would never be enough. When it was finally my turn to give my gift, I stood up, ready to share the surprise I had carefully planned. But just as I opened my mouth, Lily jumped up and announced, "Everyone, look outside." The room turned, and there it was, a brand new red Audi A6, complete with a giant bow. My stomach dropped. The applause and excitement flooded the room, and my parents rushed outside to take photos, overwhelmed with joy. Lily stood proudly, the center of attention as always. I stood there, holding my little box, feeling invisible. My carefully planned surprise, something I knew my parents would love, was completely overshadowed. It wasn't just the car, it was the way Lily had turned everything into a spectacle. Once again, she had made everything about her, and once again, I was left in the background. As the excitement around Lily's gift died down, the guests filtered back into the restaurant, chattering about the car. My parents were still floating on cloud nine, thanking Lily over and over. I felt like a ghost, standing in the corner, clutching my box of tickets, my moment completely lost in the noise. I waited, hoping that maybe, just maybe, there would be a moment where I could finally share my gift, where my parents would realize the thought and care I'd put into it. But Lily wasn't done. Of course, she wasn't. When the room had settled down, she stood up again, flashing a mischievous grin. "Oh, one more thing," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Before we eat, I think we should take a proper look at my gift." My heart sank. It wasn't enough for Lily to steal the spotlight once, she had to keep the attention on her. She gestured to my parents, who were already looking at her expectantly. "Mom, Dad, I really hope you love this." And then, she did it. She opened the folder in her hands and pulled out a giant check, 6 figures worth, and handed it to my parents. "This is for your future," she said with that signature sweet but patronizing tone. "I know you've always worried about retirement. Consider this my way of helping out." The room went silent. For a brief moment, it was as if time itself had stopped. The guests looked at each other, unsure of how to react. Then, the gasps came, followed by thunderous applause. My parents were stunned into silence before they rushed over, tears in their eyes. "Oh my God," my mother whispered, "this is too much, Lily. We can't." But Lily was already hugging them, her smile wide and proud. "You've done so much for me," she said. "This is the least I could do." I stood frozen, still holding my little gift in my hands. The tickets to Japan, the trip I had so carefully planned, suddenly felt like nothing. They were just a small token, compared to the overwhelming gesture Lily had just made. I felt the anger rising in my chest, but I didn't know what to say. What could I say? The room was buzzing with praise for Lily, while I was left in the shadows. When the applause finally died down, my parents turned to me with bright smiles, their eyes still filled with tears. "Thank you, Emma," my father said softly, barely looking at the box I was still holding. "This is wonderful." I nodded, forcing a smile, but inside, everything felt broken. It wasn't just that my gift was overshadowed, it was that, once again, no matter how much I tried, it would never be enough. I had spent so long trying to do something meaningful, to create a moment for them to cherish, but it was never going to compare to the spectacle that was Lily. I felt small. Like I was invisible. Like all the love and care I had put into this gesture didn't matter at all. And in that moment, I realized how much I had been willing to sacrifice for my family, and how little they truly understood. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I couldn't concentrate on anything. Every word I heard, every laugh, felt distant, like I was observing from far away, trapped in a room where no one could see me. My parents were still wrapped up in their excitement over Lily's gift, overwhelmed with gratitude and joy. They kept talking about how generous she was, how thoughtful, how lucky they were to have such a wonderful daughter. But with each passing moment, it felt like the room was getting smaller. The more they praised Lily, the more invisible I became. Every compliment they gave her only reminded me of how little my efforts mattered. I had spent months planning, scrimping, saving, and thinking about what they would love. And yet, there she was, swooping in with a flashy gift that had stolen their attention and their hearts, and I was left holding the pieces of a shattered moment. The dinner went on, but I couldn't bring myself to enjoy it. I picked up my food, pushing it around my plate, unable to swallow the bitterness rising in my chest. It wasn't just the gift, or the fact that Lily had stolen the spotlight. It was everything, how I'd spent my life trying to prove myself to my family, trying to earn their approval, and how none of it ever seemed to matter. Finally, after what felt like hours of listening to my parents rave about Lily's generosity, I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. My heart was pounding in my chest, my thoughts racing. I couldn't sit there anymore. I couldn't pretend like everything was okay. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I have to go." My parents looked at me in surprise, their faces still flushed with happiness. "What? Emma, is everything okay?" my mom asked, her tone concerned but distant, as if she were seeing me for the first time tonight. I forced a smile, though it felt hollow. "I'm fine. Just, got to get back to work tomorrow," I said, excusing myself as quickly as I could. I didn't wait for a response, didn't want to hear their words of concern that felt empty now. The room felt suffocating, and I needed to get out. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit my face, but it didn't soothe me. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence wash over me. Everything I had done, all the effort I had put into making this evening special for my parents, was suddenly meaningless. I wasn't angry at Lily anymore. I wasn't angry at my parents. I was just exhausted. I got into my car and drove home, not caring about the road ahead. I needed to be alone. I needed to breathe. As I pulled into my parking spot and shut off the engine, I sat there for a moment, letting the weight of the evening settle around me. It was then that I realized something I had refused to acknowledge before. This wasn't just about the gifts. It was about how much I had given, how much I had sacrificed for the sake of family, and how little it had ever mattered. I had always been the dependable one, the responsible one, the one who did everything right, who followed the rules, who made sure things were perfect. But in the end, none of it made me special. None of it made me important. I was always the one left behind, quietly watching as others took center stage. And for the first time, I couldn't keep pretending it didn't hurt. 2 weeks later, while going through my inbox, I saw an unfamiliar subject line, "Invoice for Audi A6. My heart skipped a beat. It was an email from Lily, and attached was a bill for $60,000, the cost of the car she had bought for my parents. My mind raced. There was no way this was happening. I couldn't be expected to pay this. I picked up the phone as it rang. It was Lily. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's this bill?" "Oh, that?" Lily sounded too casual. "I bought the car on credit. You need to take care of it." I froze. "You want me to pay this?" "Of course," she said, dismissively. "You've got a good job. You can afford it." I couldn't believe it. "No, I'm not paying this, Lily. You bought a car you can't afford, and now you want me to clean up your mess." "Stop being dramatic," she snapped. "It's just money. Don't you want to help them? They need this." I gritted my teeth. "This is your problem, not mine. I'm not helping you." There was a pause. "Fine. But don't expect them to be happy with you. They'll be so disappointed." Her words stung, but I wasn't going to give in. I ended the call, my mind racing with anger and disbelief. This was it, I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. This time I was standing up for myself. The next day, I got a call from Mom. Her voice was serious, and I knew something was wrong. "Sharon, we need to talk. Come over after work." I walked into their house, and the tension was immediate. My parents sat on the couch, faces grim, with Lily between them, playing the victim. My father spoke first, disappointment in his tone. "Your sister told us everything. Why are you refusing to help her?" I couldn't believe it. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice tight. "Lily buys a car she can't afford, makes a show of it, and now I'm supposed to pay?" Mom cut in. "Family helps family, Sharon. You've always been the responsible one, but this is different. Lily made a mistake." "A mistake?" I snapped. "A mistake is a wrong-sized shirt, not going into debt for a car and expecting someone else to fix it." Lily's voice was sugary sweet, dripping with fake concern. "I don't have the money for the first payment, Sharon. You've always had everything. Why can't you just help?" I gritted my teeth. "You need to fix your own mistakes, Lily. This is your mess, not mine." Mom stood up, her face red with frustration. "We don't want gifts from someone so cruel to their sister." She shoved the tickets to Japan back into my hands. "Cancel everything. We'll use the money to help Kate." My heart dropped. "So you're rejecting my gift? The one I spent months planning?" "Yes," Dad said firmly. "Until you do the right thing and help your sister." I stood there, staring at them, feeling everything I had worked for crumble. But instead of arguing, I simply placed the tickets back in my bag. "I'll take care of the tickets. I'll cancel everything." I walked out without another word. As I sat in my car, I knew something had shifted. This wasn't the end, it was the beginning. I was done being the backup. It was time for them to realize I wasn't the person they thought I was. That night, I couldn't shake the conversation from my mind. My parents' words echoed in my head, their disappointment, their rejection of my thoughtful gift. But as I sat there, in the quiet of my apartment, something inside me hardened. I had spent my life trying to meet everyone's expectations, trying to be the perfect daughter, the responsible one. But for what? To be dismissed, to be ignored, to be made to feel like nothing? No more. I picked up the phone and called the travel agency first thing the next morning. I canceled the trip to Japan. I wasn't going to let my parents' reaction define me anymore. I wasn't going to let Lily's reckless behavior continue to overshadow everything I did. They wanted to take the easy way out, to give in to the flashy gestures and shallow displays, fine. But I wasn't going to be part of it. I arranged for the full refund, and as the money hit my account, I moved it to a separate account, out of their reach. I knew my parents would expect me to give them the money, to fix their mess, but this time I was saying no. Later that day, my phone rang again. It was Mom, her voice tight with expectation. "Have you gotten the refund yet?" "Yes," I replied, calm but firm. "I've canceled everything. The money is mine now." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What do you mean, it's yours?" "I mean I'm keeping it," I said. "I'm done giving in. You can't keep treating me like I'm just here to clean up the messes you've created." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could feel the shock radiating through the phone. But I didn't care. This was my moment. For the first time in my life, I was putting myself first. "I'm not giving you the money," I said again, this time with finality. I hung up before she could respond, my heart pounding, but steady. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my family, make me feel small anymore. It was time to live for me. I sat down at my kitchen table, looking at the small pile of paperwork and receipts. I felt lighter than I had in years. This wasn't just about the money, it was about taking back control, about showing my family, and myself, that I was worth more than their expectations. For the first time I felt free. And I knew that no matter what happened next, I had made the right choice. The following days felt like a blur. I kept thinking about how my family had twisted the truth, how they had painted me as the villain for standing up for myself. But I wasn't going to let their narrative control my story. I needed to take back the truth, to show everyone what had really happened. It started with a simple post on social media. I wasn't going to let my parents' manipulation go unchecked, especially after the way they'd humiliated me. I sat down at my laptop, took a deep breath, and typed out the truth. I've always tried to be the dependable one, the one who does the right thing, I began, my fingers flying across the keys. But when I gave my parents a thoughtful anniversary gift, one they would have truly loved, my sister Lily decided to one-up me. She bought a $60,000 car on credit, just to steal the spotlight at their anniversary dinner. And now, after all the praise she's received, she wants me to pay for it. I paused for a moment, my chest tight. I didn't want to do this, it felt so raw, so exposing. But I had to. For once, I had to make my voice heard. I've never been the flashy one, the one who needs to show off. I gave them a gift that came from my heart. But it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. So here it is, proof of what really happened. I attached screenshots, the bill for the car, the text messages from Lily demanding I pay for it, the email asking me to clean up her mess. I laid it all out there. The truth. Unfiltered. As soon as I hit post, my phone blew up. The responses were immediate, overwhelming. People I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, sharing their shock and support. I can't believe what she did, one comment read. Lily's always been manipulative, but this? Unbelievable. The tide of public opinion shifted in my favor faster than I could have imagined. The comments flooded in, many from friends and even some of my family members, who had never seen Lily's behavior for what it was. My aunt, who had always been supportive of Lily, sent me a private message, "You've been so patient with her. I can't believe how she treated you." I let the messages roll in, each one a small victory. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one hiding in the shadows. The truth had a way of cutting through the noise, and for once, people were listening. Then came the unexpected, my mom's post. She shared a lengthy message about how devastated she was by the situation, painting me as the heartless daughter who turned her back on family. She mentioned Lily's struggles and how hard it had been for her. But it was too late. The comments started piling up, and the story began to change. A few minutes later, Aunt Linda, who had always seen through my mom's blind favoritism, commented, "Mary, I love you, but this is shameful. Sharon has always been there for you. She's never asked for anything in return. Maybe it's time you realized who's really been holding this family together." The floodgates opened. My cousins, my old friends, even some of my mom's old friends started speaking out. The truth was out now, and there was no going back. People began sharing their own stories of being manipulated by Lily, of the sacrifices they'd made for her and the way she'd taken advantage. My heart swelled with a mixture of relief and vindication. I wasn't the only one who had been hurt by Lily's selfishness. I wasn't alone. That night, my phone buzzed again. A message from my Uncle Steve, "Your mom's furious. She says you've embarrassed the family. But you should know, there's a lot of people who are on your side. They've finally seen the real Lily." I leaned back in my chair, taking in the weight of everything that had happened. My parents' narrative, the one they'd tried to control, was unraveling. The public reveal had been a risk, but it was the one that finally gave me back my voice. I wasn't the villain in their story anymore. I was the one telling the truth. And for the first time, that felt enough. In the weeks that followed, everything shifted. The chaos of the family drama began to settle, but I felt something inside me that I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for so many years started to lift. I was no longer the person I had been. I had finally broken free of the expectations, the judgments, and the endless cycle of putting others first. For the first time in my life, I was living for me. I threw myself into new projects at work, things I'd been too afraid to pursue before. I booked a solo trip to Mexico, not for anyone else, but for me, to explore the world on my own terms. I planned an itinerary that was completely mine, filled with experiences I had always dreamed of but never allowed myself to pursue. I visited museums, went scuba diving, tasted new foods, and explored ancient ruins. It was exhilarating, liberating, and for the first time I felt truly alive. When I returned, there was a quiet calm in my life. My phone had quieted down, but I felt an unexpected sense of peace. I had stopped caring about trying to fit into a mold that was never mine to begin with. I learned that I could exist without constantly seeking approval, that my worth wasn't tied to my family's expectations. One day, as I walked through the airport on my way to a meeting, I received a message from my younger cousin Emily. Her words hit me hard. "I've been watching you, and you're my hero now. Seeing you stand up to mom and everyone else made me realize it's okay to set boundaries, to put yourself first." That message hit deeper than anything else. It was validation, not from my family, but from someone who truly understood. Emily had been watching, learning, and seeing me as something I had never imagined I could be: strong, resilient, and unapologetically myself. And then, the most unexpected thing happened. My mom called me. I had braced myself for another confrontation, but her tone was different. "Sharon," she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "We've been talking. I know I've been hard on you. Maybe I didn't always show you how much you meant to me." I paused, unsure of how to respond. "It's okay, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I'm just finally learning to take care of myself." There was a long silence before she spoke again. "I'm proud of you. I don't know what it will look like, but maybe we can start over. Just the two of us." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something, a crack in the wall, a glimmer of hope that things could change, even if slowly. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I had moved on, and I was no longer tied to the need for validation. The next few months were quiet but filled with small steps forward. I continued to carve out a life that was truly mine, one built on my terms. The family drama faded into the background, no longer a weight I carried every day. And in the silence, I finally found peace. As I looked at the new life I was creating, I realized that the true freedom had never been in escaping my family, it had always been in choosing to stop living for their approval. I was finally living for myself, and for the first time, I knew that was enough. Looking back, everything that happened with my family, the conflict, the betrayals, the hurt, was the catalyst for something much bigger. I used to believe my worth was tied to what others expected of me, that if I did everything right, if I kept everyone happy, I would finally be seen. But the truth was, I was invisible to myself, lost in a cycle of trying to please people who would never truly appreciate me. The moment I decided to stop playing the role they assigned me, everything changed. I stopped seeking their validation, stopped letting their expectations dictate my choices. It was freeing, and for the first time I could breathe. I found the strength to choose myself, to create a life that was entirely my own. It wasn't easy, and it still isn't. There are days when I wonder if I did the right thing, when the guilt tries to creep back in. But I know deep down that the decision to put myself first was the most important one I could have made. I'm finally living authentically, with purpose and clarity, and for the first time, I'm proud of the person I've become. I can't predict what the future holds, but I know this: I'm not waiting for anyone's approval anymore. I'm living for me, and that's all that matters.